welcome.
Hi. Yep.
Okay, we thought there were going to be like 4 people in this talk, and everyone apparently had their calendars open this afternoon.
I was going to say, everybody should have been at lunch, but I appreciate it. So let's get this started. So my name is Kami Leach. I'm a solution architect at Epic Games. Hey, I should get that one right?
Yeah.
My background is in visual effects, and I did this for a long time, focused mostly on story development, character development, and lighting, look dev, and rendering. So when the thought of workflows came up, I was like, you know what, this will be good. So I brought along Michael.
Hello. I'm a that's a hard word to say. I'm a technical account manager for media and entertainment, and my background is in visual effects and film and previs animation. And that's all I have. That's it.
Well, thank you all for coming out today. Let's go ahead and see what we're going to do. So linear content and workflow is kind of a touchy subject when it comes to a games engine. It's really hard to kind of understand what's going on when we're so used to, most visual effects studios are used to a full end-to-end pipeline. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, the different types of pipeline that are available, and then we're going to kind of walk through some workflows that we've found a lot of customers could use help with, and then also bring them through a little bit of a demo of how we think would be a good way to set up a shot in some workflows. So a typical CG production, if you look at it, is pretty straightforward, end to end. You start with story, storyboards, previs, and dive all the way through the following diagram, hitting the end, sometimes circling back through. This has been a standard way. You take it, you hand it off. It's very linear, it's very siloed. You don't always have the full interaction with everybody in every part. And in the long run, you might end up being hurt because you didn't have that earlier interaction with the other parts of your team. Is there anything you want to?
No, that's totally it. And the way, as we get to the next slide, the way that we understand pipelines in real time is a lot of these that are in that red rectangle, a lot of these have to be front-loaded. So modeling and rigging and some of those things actually have to sort of switch their order of importance. And so when they start coming in sooner than later, because all the departments start working together and iterating faster.
Yeah, I mean, it can be very costly to get all the way to the end towards rendering and realize, oh, my animation is slightly out of sync. You have to send it all the way back. This can be weeks and weeks of work. When you go into more of a real-time pipeline, this is happening real time. Got it. Mm-hmm. So here's kind of what we like to say is a real-time CG production. As you can see, there are still front ends and back ends, but they kind of coincide and bleed together. The animation can see what's happening with the storyboards, the concept artists, the cameras are being put in. As they're doing this, the lighters are moving lights around so that the animators don't have to move their animation, or we do know if we have to move a building. In the past, you'd have to send it all the way back. Something like this is an amazing way to work. It does take a little bit to wrap your head around it.
Well, I do think there are a few of you that already know this workflow pretty well, so I'm surprised to see a lot of you here. But in terms of pre-lighting and the motion capture in the front end of this, it quickly gets to the second stage. And the modeling, the rigging, the surfacing, all of this is overlapping, and you can tell just by the way that these tear up and tear down, all of this is just an ongoing process. It becomes more almost circular than linear.
Yeah, coming from my background is more on the latter end of the production. I find that being able to have this interaction early on saves me when we have to reach a delivery. If I'm not ready to, because no matter what, honestly, you still have to reach that delivery. So sending it back isn't always an option. With this workflow, you catch a lot of those issues ahead of time. One other thing that we actually really like to express with anybody getting into a linear content pipeline is do a vertical slice. This is a different way of thinking. This is a different engine. The reasons you really want to get through it are listed here, which is, you find the pain points early, you need to prove out a workflow, you expose bad assumptions, fill the gaps in knowledge, and reinforce the teams with strategic hires, and you basically learn from these mistakes. You learn from these mistakes at an early stage so it doesn't cost you in the end. We see many customers try and bend this into their pipeline, when really you should just go through the workflow once, proof it out, see where you do need more help, see where you do need our guidance, and what we can do more. If you can't find it online, then that's what we're actually here for, is to see where those missing articles are, these missing talks to bring you through this. Anything else about?
Perfect.
All right, cool. So one of the first pain points in here is, how do I get my animation in? And that's your job.
Yeah, so I wrote an article a couple of months ago because I kept seeing this reoccurring theme of different types of animation and how things were coming into the engine. you know, the most widely adopted ways of getting animation into Unreal Engine is FBX. It's easy, it's simple. You can bring in your skeleton and your mesh, and then from then on out, you're bringing in animations only. So it's very lightweight, it's very performant. There are other very performant methods, but they're not as easy as just bringing in an FBX and slapping your animation on it. Alembics allow for squash and stretch and character nuances that the engine, and if you've seen our future product board, then you know that some very special tools that have been asked for a long time are coming. But, you know, currently and today, you know, people say, hey, you know what, I want to get these characters in there. I want them to be squishy, stretchy, and do all these cool things, and Maya helps me do that. Okay. You know, this article is really clear, and feel free to check it out, but it's really clear about if you get 27 Alembic characters in your timeline, there's two things that are going to happen. Number one, the sequencer and the way that it works, geocaches are loaded. It tries to load all of it, and we can minimize how much gets loaded, but it still tries to load all of it into memory. So if you have a shot string out of about, I don't know, 200 shots or whatever, it's going to try and load every Alembic cache that you have. Same thing with USD. And so it's really going to start to choke and bog you down. So this is why the vertical slice testing is so important, because you can actually hit these pain points and go, oh, I don't think we want to set up a whole pipeline, hire a bunch of people to make an Alembic, you know, giant Alembic animation or Alembic crowds or whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just you have to do the testing and find out what way works best for you and what you can get away with. You might not need quite as much squash and stretch as you thought you did. Or maybe you can be patient or use some blend shapes, because FBX supports blend shapes as well. That's
I mean, the common use cases in here they're saying for Alembic would be more like simulations, right? So if you want to do a combo of the two, bring your character in, run a full FBX like that, you can also bring in more accurate simulations.
Yeah, and the data impact, the cons, every artist having all of those Alembics on their hard drives or in your Perforce. There are ways to mitigate that with asset management, but it's still not perfect when you have that much data flowing around.
All right, another area of the engine that we like to talk about is how do we actually manage the shots in engine. We're going to get into some sequencer workflows here, but one of the things I want to talk about is the difference between levels and layers. Levels are basically individual maps. You can reference them into your current scene. So for instance, if you have a very large world, you're outside, you're out in a big open field, and then you go into a cave. You don't want to load all of that geometry into in one time. You want to be able to put those in different layers or different levels and bring those in, isolate them, and move them through. The other next available thing in there is layers. Now layers are their organizational tool. They basically make you use selections of the visibility that comes in with your levels. Now the key thing here that is why you should use both is it's a good idea for the levels and layers in the main level, because an actor can exist in multiple layers at the same time, while an actor can only exist in one level at a time. So this helps you to be able to control it, bring it in, set your visibilities, move it through sequencer, but allow to have clean collection of data that you can move through other different sequences, shots. You're now not building the same thing multiple times. So sequencer is your friend. Sequencer is basically your only edit in engine for you to look at. As you can see here, these are all the controls curves that you can get out of our rigs currently. There's always more that you can add in yourself. We're going to talk a little bit more about storytelling and how we put this together to make it actually shot performant. We'll dive into this a little bit, but basically we wanted to start to treat sequencer as departments. Think about it as every person that is going to touch that, they need to have an isolated area to do that in. It'll eventually come into a nested group. However, if you have multiple people in the multiple same tracks, everybody hitting, if you have your lighting in with your animation, somebody could step over each other's work. Something can go ahead and go awry really fast. Even with source control, somebody could put a day's worth of work in and find out that they're not able to adjust it. By isolating this and setting it up ahead of time, it'll allow you to also move through many different sequences and shots with ease and control. Anything else?
That is awesome. That's all I got.
All right. we're gonna do this. This is the kiss of death, right? Let's do a demo. So what we have here is just a quick sequence setup using some of our marketplace assets that we wanted to show how we could bring them together to make ease of use for varying teams to be able to contribute and make modifications. Just gonna play this through really quick. It's just a very simple setup.
Sorry, we don't have dramatic music.
I was hoping you'd sing.
Yeah.
You did a good job last night.
That's not gonna happen.
So yeah, these are just two of our assets we've brought together to see how we can actually work through different animations, levels, and varying lighting setups. As you can see as we're playing through this, and I will scrub through, on the right-hand side is a levels tab. You're seeing them triggered on and off as you go through the sequencer. This allows for customization, variation, and control over each individual shot sequence. With a setup like this, you're often looking at two different camera angles. You want to actually be able to work. Wow, I was like, did you fall through the floor? I was like, I didn't expect that to happen. But
Camera needs work.
I told you, with lighting and rendering, you're on the camera side of these things. So with a shot like this, you're often going to do two different angles. Those are going to, in a normal real-world experience, you would have different lighting setups, different shadows, different stage and props environments. You want to be able to do that really with ease. So being able to go between having all of the Bungee Man shots from this angle look the same, and the ones on top with the alien look the same, you want to be able to have control in sequencer and not have to repeat it for every single shot. The big thing that I want to express with this is no matter what, shot is king. I want to explain that in a slightly different way. At the very end, when you're going to go through and render these shots, if you are not controlling things by a shot level, it will be hard for you to isolate, to work in that, and to render it out individually. It'll also put a lot of confusion, a lot of extra data coming in. If you put, say, for instance, shot visibility on the top level, you will always have to work from that top sequence all the way down. It does not matter how nested you are. If the visibility is there, it'll be triggered only in that sequence. So that means, as a lighting artist, if I only have to work in, shot 502, I still have to load up the whole sequence, bring in that data, and go through all the visibility. Another key thing with visibility is you do not want to have everything on when you open your file. I know we'd all love really, really nice machines, but we can't always have that option. If you load everything into your sequence or into your level right away, you could go from, say, 1,600 shots, you turn on your sequencer visibility, it goes down to 150. That is a lot of time wasted unloading, and also possibly memory and GPU crashes. And again, that is also what has to be loaded up when you are rendering on the farm or any kind of output, local renders. You would have to go through that full engine cost. It stacks up, even on a 90-second one short, it can be a lot. Now imagine trying to do a feature length this way. Anything to?
No, I'm shaking my head about the feature length this way.
We can talk about feature length, the Lembeck offline, but so a couple things that are going to show you as we pull out of
You want to
the
go
camera.
down inside? Or?
Oh yeah, I will. So what you'll see as we kind of go through these shots, and you can see it when they play, is the lighting changes. That's because of the different angles that we see, we want to make the customizations and beauty light them. You can also see on the left-hand side again, as I'm going slower, that the levels are turning off and on. These are the areas that we're controlling all within the sequencer. By controlling them there again, we were able to make the correct changes. As you see, even between these two shots, we have similarities, so we're allowed to set up a duplicate sequence or instance or a one local spot or local subsequence that controls across that camera angle and vice versa.
The Meerkat demo is a fairly good example of that type of control because every shot had almost completely different lighting. It was pretty, it's not the best case scenario because it's a few years old, but in terms of the lights and what she's trying to show here, it did do a lot of that.
Yeah, the difference in that one when you load it up is because the animation is all one long control. So they did actually not put it into a subsequence like we're going to show here. All right, so time to dive in. All right, I'm going to pull him out just a little bit. We've got these guys up here. Okay, so breaking it down into simple sequences of who is going to touch what spot is going to help. You have your camera department, your anim department, your lighting, effects. You can even split these down even further, different types of environments, interior, who's just doing any extras, who's doing
Props.
effects, props, so forth. Say you don't want your environment artist who has to sculpt this big landscape to have to worry maybe about foliage. So that could go to a different department. These are things you're going to want to set up ahead of time. Make these decisions, sit down. That circles back to the vertical slice. You don't always know. You can't always make these assumptions until you probably take one of your more in-depth shots through a process. So under these, each, they have their subsequences. Anim, so forth. This one has the two different anims broken out. You could put them in together depending on how your show is. Do you want background characters put in one area? Do you want them to interact? Really think ahead of time how it should be. Along with that, you're gonna wanna choose if you want spawnable or persistent or possessible in your, I was like, I'm reading persistent. If you want spawnable or possessible in your workflow. Do you want to talk about that?
There is one caveat on that is level sequences, spawnables, geocache, they all load in the sequencer. So that 260 shot string out that I was describing, if you have spawnables in all of those shots, they're all going to try to load. And they're going to load until you run out of memory on a graphics card, and then they won't load. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Spawnables are great. They do serve a really good purpose, but it's just something you need to know that if you do have 400 shots, you're going to have some problems if you're using spawnables, if it's all in one sequence.
And using possessables and levels, you can control this easier. So you do not have to load the levels of all your characters. You trigger those in sequencer, they come in, they now move to the spot where they are on the timeline in the animation, allowing you to move forward. So a shot like this, you can easily get away with spawnables, and that might work better for your workflow. The other one, again, is lighting, but the bigger one that I want to talk about is the environment and setting that up. What we have here are 3 different levels of environment. These are all controlled by the hierarchical bias, which basically means who trumps the other one over the layering of, say, an adjustment. You start here with your scene level. This is what you think this whole scene is going to need. It's going to work great for you, but as we all know, once you get into a shot, it doesn't always work great for you. So from this angle, we have set up what's a group 1. We've taken and made a list of all the things, all the adjustments that we want to make in this, and put them into this subsequence. This subsequence now only has to be controlled once and can be put into multiple other subsequences. So I control everything that's happening here in this, from this angle in group A, and all the shots with the alien in it go with group A. Now, that's not always the final step. When you get closer, you're going to want some beauty lighting. You might want to add some more. You need to move more rocks. You need to make changes. That now comes in with your actual scene. So you go, shot, sorry. Had that one labeled backwards. So scene overall overrides, then comes into your group overrides, and then it comes into your shot. That allows you to go ahead and make those changes that you need. To control this, and I will show another example at the end, you do that by setting the hierarchical bias, which is right here. And as you can see, it is the higher the bias, the bias will take precedence. So you can keep continuously layering this in. By default, it comes in as 100, so it does allow you to have room to move it up and down if you've already established all of your shots. You can bring something in, flip it on, you're good to go. A way to see that, I think, is if we mute this track, this one. So the environment over here is controlled by a layer of visibility on this track to allow more to pass through. And mute that. So that is pretty much the basic setups of what's going to allow you to move between shot to shot to shot with ease. If you come back here, like I said, this is handled with group A, and not put together right. And this one has group B. How those are handled in the overall layout of files and control and setup is shots, sequences, then you go into each individual one where you would have your animation, effects, and subsequences, and then the others that I was controlling with the group is going to be down here in the shot groups. These are scene levels, and the group A is the one I was talking about, and B. Those will allow you to, again, control that area and know what you want from overriding other angles. This can also be a good layout to do in storyboarding when you're first starting out, realizing what things you're going to want and establishing what shots look similar, get that workflow in there and build it out.
Sounds good to me.
So that is pretty much the basics of how I would go through and start to set up a sequence. This really right here at this level is kind of just an editorial. It allows you to go through, see how they play together. But realistically, when you click in here, you see this shot. At this point, I'm loading it from the level sequence. If I were to go and load it just from its own, it will look the same when the camera's set. It should. What happened there?
Now you can also build tools to create these types of setups automatically. So leveraging the editor utility widgets is a great way of sort of making pipeline tools where your artist can either create shots, or if you have a CG supervisor that's in charge of making the shots, they can make all the shots with proper naming conventions and that kind of thing. And those kind of tools are really worthwhile because you can also utilize and leverage like ShotGrid or other data management systems that might actually assemble these shots in this way for your artists. So grabbing only the assets that they need for that particular shot so that there's not all that data in one place, or that they don't have to have the whole project.
So just to talk a little bit more about hierarchical bias, and just an easy way to view it is I've set up another level with just lights. So as you can see, we've got the scene, which is everything you need in your scene. That would be a red light in this indication, group, and shot. These have all been set up to properly follow, 200, 100, and I think 50. As you can see, as I mute these, the other change that was there at the group level comes through, and then at the actual scene sequence level. This is a great way, like I said, to add those finesse and that detail as you go along, but still keeping it shot local, but still having it go across the scene, a whole sequence. If I, for instance, were lighting and trying to do a bunch of tentpole shots and get those things sent out so my lighters could use them, I would then put that into the scene level. And then I would go through and we would decide what goes into the group level as it is per angle. That way I can deliver it and they can just take it and run with it. And then from there, as you get the adjustments to cameras and closer angles, you can add in your spawnable lights, your possessable lights that'll only affect that one shot. This also helps in overall optimization for rendering. You're not loading in tons and tons of lights that are not useful. By being able to do this, you will actually get more performant when outputting. So that's pretty much how we go through. That's the setup that we've kind of worked with. A lot of people have different variations on this, but really all I'd say is make sure shot is king. If you have to, sequence, but don't try and build your whole movie on one top sequencer. We've seen it. Yeah. It's a good lesson learned, but also a lesson that you can learn from doing your vertical slice. When it comes down to just overall linear workflow, the next thing that you would really want to look at is getting into post-process volumes and eventually rendering. So we can talk a little bit more about those. So as many of you have probably seen, post-process volume is where you're going to control a lot of that finesse of your look. A lot of what everybody says, I want to do in Nuke. Well, we're going to start here because if you have made this so performant, you can get this back through the engine a lot faster and hopefully not having to take it as far in compositing and post-process effects. Post-process effects can be handled in here. You get a lot of the anti-aliasing, bloom, and different controls, even to get it down to the basic fine details that you need. There, all you got to do is render. That's a trick. Depending on what you're trying to do, how much you're trying to output, really going through and understanding the optimizations for rendering is key. We have a really good online documentation from Sean Comley on demystifying the render queue. This also talks a lot about how to get better render quality settings out of there. It is not always just cranking up the samples. Well, it's cranking up the samples, but not just in movie render queue. You need to go into your post-process volume and adjust lighting samples. Even from there, some lights are going to need more samples. By optimizing through sequencer and have everything set up ahead of time, you will have the bandwidth to add these different layers and levels and samples into your lighting, getting you renders in the long run. What I would say, even though there's a lot of CVARs out there, ways that people say they've fixed their renders, please render it once, twice before you try and put a CVAR in there. Odds are there's a 50-50 chance that CVAR might screw up something or somewhere else. Let's see what we're working with to begin with. Then we can take you through what the changes and the challenges are. Oftentimes, some of these CVARs were in older engine releases, and they've since been fixed. So you don't need that, and your output does not need to calculate that. That is, again, a memory cost.
Yeah. And that's a really good case scenario. It really depends on what you're trying to render, you know, how high resolution your meshes are and so forth. But what you're trying to achieve is sort of dictates what CVARs might help you, and you might actually be loading up memory-wise that doesn't need to be taken.
Yep. I'll say it 500 times, vertical slice, panhandle, whatever you guys got to call it. There is this example of, it's an older one. We are working on another one, which will be put out probably within the next year or so, which will give it more of a workflow similar to what you saw today. These are the assets that we use. They are free. They are great to play with, bring in. It's a full environment, lighting, and elements that you can actually start to cut your own short together. The dev community, go there.
Yeah, go there. There's a lot of really good information, and the essays and the TAMs have contributed extensively over the last couple of years just to try and get, you know, travel knowledge out of our heads and into the hands of users. So.
Yeah. Michael Muir, who helped me put this project together, this was one of his big initiatives. It is a very valuable tool out there that him and Michael both worked on together. Please read it, contribute to it, give us notes. We would like to keep this moving forward. Also, another one to check out was the virtual production visualization guide. We actually, many of you caught the hands-on workshop this morning where this takes you through a lot of the other tools of how you can build a story and come together through different mocap systems that are easy to use, VCam, and yeah, it's a pretty rad way to go. That is pretty much what I have. Thank you. All right, good job. We did it. All right, thank you, everyone.